Anthony, I feel like this is some sort of attack over here against
I
me.
think we're going to have George Jetson on the program today because of your background.
Yeah. Hey, meet No Vacancy.
I'm Anthony. Welcome to No Vacancy Live. That's my friend Glenn.
You're watching the #1 show in hospitality.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to No Vacancy Live. I'm Glenn Hausman. That's Anthony Melchiori. We're not sure if we're going to have a guest today. They haven't showed up just yet, but gosh, lots to talk about, my friend.
The most important thing to talk about is you get 1 penny if you know the housekeeper in the Jetson who's behind you on your green screen.
Well, of course, that's Rosie. Or I should say, of course, that's Rosie.
Very
over there.
good.
I mean, I didn't have to type in Jetsons robot into Google. I was able to go with Rosie, the
If you look at the Jetsons, right, and when we were little kids, everything is basically happening. Like, you know, you can see we're obviously doing this, so that was Jetson when you can see people on screen. But we still don't have flying cars, like significantly flying cars, a significant amount.
Yeah, the only flying cars I see are in like movies going over cliffs.
Yeah, but do you think that's ever going to happen?
Yeah, not in our lifetime.
No.
People can't even like handle flying on an airplane. You imagine flying those things?
Cutting people off, flying into
in
people.
3D. It's bad enough going down 6th Avenue in New York City, or say up 6th Avenue.
But you know what? You heard a lot about self-driving cars.
Yeah.
Well, now you don't hear about them anymore.
No.
Yeah.
I feel like it's another one of those things that are going to be in the dust bowl of potential.
Well, I have a car that's self-driving. You have to keep your hands on the wheel, but it drives itself. And I was coming back from Boston, and I would tell you that when I take that 5-hour drive, it's sometimes a little tiring. When I have that car, I feel very awake when I get to my destination.
Yeah, for sure. Hey, our guest is backstage,
right.
so that's cool. Good news. But before we go on, we can't go on without a conversation of talking about the tragic cyber attack that's happening to MGM Resorts right now.
And
Micah, if this is something you're interested in talking about, give me the thumbs up, and we'll bring you in on the conversation.
Well, let's start. Let's start, and then we can bring him in.
All right.
It seems like everybody I know, every company is getting cyber attacked. And they paid apparently another company in Vegas paid $30 million to get their information back. And how it works is there's two. I don't know if you know this, but there's a legal way of doing it. So if you take somebody's information, so you say, "Hey, Mr. Anthony," or "Hey, Mr. Glenn, I'm able to get into your information. I'm able to take 20,000 of your members. However, I won't do that." Okay, it's a ransom fund or whatever it's called. It's legal. And then you give me $20,000, $30,000, and I never penetrate, I never steal, I never take any of your information. It's more of, "Hey, Mr. Smart Guy, thank you for showing a vulnerability." Right. Then you have to report that to the federal government. Okay, that's what happened in Uber when they didn't report it, and that person over there got in a lot of trouble. Now, once you take somebody's information, and I'm not an expert on this, but I think I got this somewhat right. If you take somebody's information and say, "Hey, I have your information, all 50,000 of your Uber drivers' information, and if you don't give me X amount of dollars, you're in trouble."
Right.
That is illegal. And if you do pay them, or either way, you have to let the federal government know. So anybody out there that's a lot smarter in that realm, let me know. See if I got that right or not.
Yeah, for sure. And I would like to mention go to novacancynews.com right now, because we did on August 8th a show on this exact subject about large companies falling victims to cyber attacks and what you can do about it with Roderick Calejo, head of cybersecurity transformation at Logic River. That is from August 8th.
If I'm not mistaken, we had somebody from Vegas, I won't say who, on our podcast talking about this.
Yeah. We'll leave that for another day. So I wish them the best of luck getting through this. CEO Bill Hornbuckle put out a statement today thanking all of the customers and the associates that work at MGM Resorts for all the effort that they're putting through to be there for the customers. They've been upping staff levels in order to handle things by hand, and hopefully they'll work this through. I can't imagine how much money they're losing on those slot machines, though.
Yeah. Our friend who works over there, I called him last night and I said, "How bad is it?" And he's like, "Well, I'm working a lot of hours, but we have a great team and everything's going okay." And this is just unfortunately the new norm.
Yep. All right, so let's get to our sort of next topic, because there's something else I want to bring in. But Micah Green over here, over at is it Tailos, or is that how you pronounce it? You
nailed it, Tailos.
All right, I wanted to be sure I didn't get to New York on it. So Micah Estis Green, founder and CEO of Tailos, they focus on robotics in hotels, which is pretty cool, and definitely a thing in the future. Welcome, man.
Thanks so much for having me. I also love by the way.
And tell the audience how we met.
Yeah, so we met at the conference. It was a HOA through my mom, Micah Estis Green, who you both have known for.
I'm not familiar with her. I don't.
Yeah.
Nobody in the hotel business knows who she is.
As soon as someone makes it into the Technology Hall of Fame in the hospitality industry, I vanquish them from my brain. So
exactly.
Sorry.
That out. Exactly. Yeah, but she's been an inspiration of mine for a while, and brainwashed me into the industry too. And it's funny because we end up going to a lot of these same conferences together, and I think you guys ended up coming to one of my panels talking about robotics, AI, and the future of the industry.
Yeah, I had just missed your panel, and we were coming in to judge another competition, and I saw your mom, and then she introduced me to you. And I just thought you were just a normal young kid. And then I realized you're not a normal young kid. You're a normal young entrepreneur that's killing it. So explain to everyone what you're doing.
Yeah, for sure. So, and it kind of runs in the family. Her parents have been entrepreneurs and she is an entrepreneur. So kind of picked up on that. And growing up, I was doing robotics. So I did little kits and things, on my own, and then eventually did some international competitions. So I love that side of it, but also saw the entrepreneurship side, the business side from her, and fell in love. So I ended up going to Cornell and working as a housekeeper, actually, as part of one of my classes. And that was the aha moment, was, learning about the labor crisis that's hit the industry and really the turnover rates and retention issues that are there too. And saw that there's this perfect blend that you could bring robotics into the space. So Tailos is a robotics company. We're focusing on robots for real estate, starting within hospitality. And our first product is Rosie, just inspired by your background there. That's the vision. That's where we're headed. And bringing robots into the space. We're focused on commercial floor cleaning right now, and eventually going to get into other types of cleaning tasks, all the way to delivery, security.
So Micah, I just did a speaking engagement, a keynote speech on the changing nature of hospitality for Unifocus on Tuesday, and I mentioned your product because what I really love about it is it's hitting one of the biggest pain points. It's not just going to help housekeepers and make their jobs easier, but vacuuming happens to be one of the highest places of injury within the hotel. So by eliminating this problem, it's a good double dose of being able to lower labor costs while totally eliminating a whole potential category of responsibility if someone gets injured.
Yeah, exactly. And some people don't realize that room attendants actually have the second highest rate of injury in the entire private sector.
But I'm curious as to what the first one is. Is it front desk clerks that get insulted and that those insults hurled at them all day long?
I'm gonna guess it is some kind of law enforcement or a roofer.
Good guesses. And no, you could imagine front desks, dealing with the mask situation back in a couple years ago. But no, it's actually warehouse workers, factory workers, who are dealing with really heavy loads and whatnot.
So there's been a lot of people trying to be in your space, and there's some people in your space, and I don't think anyone does it well. And first of all, I commend you for focusing on something that you can tackle and be really successful. I think some people have tried to tackle 3 or 4 things at once with the same product, and it hasn't worked. So why has your product worked? And if you can mention, who are some of your clients and how's it work? And if we have a video, I'd love to show. Oh no, we'll do that next time. But just so explain it.
Yeah, 100%. So you nailed one of the things, right? I think a lot of roboticists like to build cool technology. Robots in general are cool. but starting with like a very clear problem statement and just one thing, just do one thing well, because it's hard enough. The other factor too that's pretty interesting is that when you think about the users, like room attendants or housemen, they can speak all sorts of languages. They, come from many different countries. This might be their first time ever seeing a robot, right? So thinking about that user experience up front is so important. And I don't think people necessarily feel that or think about that, up front. So not having to deal with text or language, right? That's like one thing. How do you make it as seamless as possible to use? Because at the end of the day, if the people using it, like the room attendants, aren't able to or don't enjoy using it or it doesn't help them, then they're going to feel like it's extra work, right? And they're already busy enough. They already have a really tough job. So we've really designed with that user experience in mind. And I think that helps a lot.
Okay. And can you mention some of your clients?
Yeah, so we work with a bunch of different management companies and ownership groups, some big brands too. So on the management side, we're working with groups like Sage and Hersha. We've also now deployed into multifamily as well, so apartments and senior living too.
Wow.
And we're global.
Oh, good for you. That's pretty exciting stuff. So I want to talk about generally speaking about robotics in hospitality. How are you seeing our advancement in this category in regards to where we could actually find some success? Because one of the things that I preach about a lot when I'm on the road and on this show and other content is I'm afraid that they're going to try to replace the wrong human beings in the hotel, which will start to commoditize our business even more so than people think it is now.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think, when you look at the types of use cases, there's certain things that are cool, right? That are coolness factor. And then there's certain things that are absolutely needed, right? So I kind of break up robotics and innovation in general into a few categories. One is you have aspirin, which solves a headache. You have vitamins that, are nice to have. And then you have oxygen, which you can't live without. So the ones that they just can't live without are where you're starting to see adoption. So with what we're doing, floor cleaning, vacuuming, you have to clean. You need a clean property. That is your product at the end of the day, clean, comfortable room, right? So that's a key piece. Another area that we're seeing that's really big is for the F&B space. Some of these serving robots that are able to help with bussing tables or able to deliver food, that's become widely adopted actually over the past couple of years since COVID, because it's been so challenging to hire and retain staff when it comes to staff, serving.
Yeah, I also think another great opportunity there are for those delivery robots to bring things to the room, extra towels, the shampoo, whatever you might need, because that's kind of that's an interaction where you don't need to have the personal touch. In fact, you might prefer not to speak to a person in that position if you're getting delivered something and might feel a little bit more vulnerable because you're in a bathrobe or something like that.
Yeah, no, and I think even from my perspective, it also can depend on like what scale of hotel or what experience you're having, right? So for me, as a millennial and somebody that is on my phone a lot and just like busy, I like to get to the room, and it can be nice to interact, but efficiency, right? Like get there as quickly as possible. I don't necessarily need to see somebody at the front desk if I'm just going for a business trip for one day or whatnot. If I'm going for a luxury experience, that's going to be very different, or for a vacation, then I want more of that service and that touch. So that's something that's interesting too, is depending on that, what type of guest that is and that specific property, different applications could make sense.
So it's funny, as you're talking about room service, the first thing I'm seeing, and I've seen those robots, and I don't see anybody's done a really good job with that. But when the robot shows up, identifying themselves and letting them know they're at the door, because when you look through the peephole, you're not going to see them because they're too small.
Yeah, so they actually call the phones and connect through the phones to say, "Hey, I'm here. I'm outside the door."
I'm outside. Oh, yeah. That is very cool. And so, what do you see after flooring, where and food and beverage, like what you're saying, and we've seen some of that where you're serving the table. What's the next big thing, do you think, and maybe we're 10 years away? And how much is AI and robotics married right now?
Yeah, for sure. So in terms of applications, to touch on that, areas that we're really excited about, other types of cleaning. So of course, floor cleaning of hard surfaces, that could be bathroom cleaning, eventually bed making, which sounds kind of crazy. That's actually where I started with the company and then realized that was going to take a little bit.
Right.
So shifted into more focused. But then there's also things like, how do you empower the staff or make them more efficient through a domino effect? So things like point A to point B delivery of linens, right? If you can deliver linens more consistently, and take that load off of the houseman or others, that has this domino effect of being able to have, rooms available.
You've done your homework, because
that's
in
clever.
every P&L performer I do, I have to explain to the owner, we need to load up the linen at night. We need to load the carts. And they're like, well, why did the housekeeper do that? And then I spend 3 hours of my life explaining to them why that's not a good idea, especially when you have a big hotel.
Right.
So that means you really did your homework.
Yeah, no, 100%. And we've heard it from a bunch of groups, right? It's good to do the discovery. We're learning a lot through that. And then your second question about AI and robotics, I mean, they go hand in hand, right? So our slogan is AI for the physical world, because we're building, I mean, think about self-driving cars, right? You have LiDAR sensors, cameras, and they're navigating around a space. And the definition of a robot is being able to have something that, can do recurring types of tasks, but also is able to adapt to the environment. So a machine doesn't adapt, a robot does adapt, right? So we're building that framework through the navigation side, right? How the robots go from one place to the next, and the data side of what's capturing within the environment. So there's a lot of AI, like real AI, real machine learning, not just buzzwords, which are thrown around a lot, that are needed, to be in these types of, to be in the real world, right? Outside of factories, outside of warehouses, within hotels.
How much AI do you use in your business to help you develop the robots or to help you do your business? A lot of people that ask that question over coffee when nobody's listening, they won't answer it.
Yeah.
They're like, well, kind of, they don't really like to answer. Somehow everybody thinks it's cheating, and it's not cheating. It's just, is using Google cheating? I mean, is using Wiki cheating? It's ridiculous. So answer that if you can.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, before AI, a lot of software engineering, they would go to Google. Like Google was their best friend, or Stack Overflow is a website too. So it's not cheating. It's just, the baseline resources. We love ChatGPT in our business. So we use it for all sorts of applications. So one thing that's really cool on the software side is one of our software engineers used it to bring, I think, hundreds of lines of code down to like 20 lines of code. So it's much more efficient there. It cleaned it up. It gave feedback on their code, which is pretty crazy. Another application we use is we used to have to review all sorts of runs. So each run the robot does, each clean essentially, we would review it more manually and look for different anomalies or issues there. Now we have ChatGPT actually funneling through that and telling us which runs to focus on. So from a customer success standpoint, we're looking at the most critical path items versus trying to stream through all of it. And that obviously creates a lot of efficiencies there. And then, of course, the basic stuff like press releases and LinkedIn posts and things like that. Don't tell anyone. But yeah, we use it for that too.
Really? Well, yeah, but you still have to edit it, and you still have to read it, and you still have to make sure it's right. So there's work there. But you use Google Bard at all?
Yeah, I have. I actually like that a lot for personal use. It's much faster.
Yeah, I like it. I like it better than ChatGPT for the stuff I use it for.
Yeah, I literally just put in, I have these ingredients, give me a recipe. And it was popped out within seconds, an awesome recipe. So
wow.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow, you just gave us a lesson. And Mr. Cook, Mr.
I
Chef
know.
over here.
That's very helpful, because I Micah, true confession time, I'm very weak at being able to figure out how to put different things together that I have in the house. So that would be really helpful.
Google will help.
Yeah. Excellent. So obviously hoteliers are game to get behind this, right? I mean, but realistically speaking, what are we talking about in terms of timeline of transformation here? Because I've been hearing about robots now 7-8 years, but
20. We've been hearing it since the Jetsons.
Yeah. But materially speaking, I haven't really seen much forward progress on that. I've only encountered one robot in my entire life, and kudos to the Waldorf Astoria in Las Vegas for that one. But I haven't seen them anywhere, because I guess I haven't stayed in Silicon Valley, at the Loft Hotel that had the first one.
Yeah, they had one of the first delivery at the relay robots. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, in terms of timeline, what's interesting is the adoption side of things has definitely accelerated. So I started this company 8 years ago, right? And we were working on the product for a while, and now have a really robust product. But in the beginning days, there was people kind of kicking the tires. There were some people that totally got it, but most of which are like, okay, this is interesting. Mm-hmm. Now, especially with COVID and the labor crisis that's hit the industry, people are desperate. I mean, they're like, what can we do? And this obviously makes a ton of sense, whether it's retaining and just creating better quality of life for the people on staff today, or it's creating those efficiencies, right? So, or a combination of the two, right? And with that, I mean, I'd say maybe in the beginning days it was 20% were seeing the vision. Now it's maybe 80%, right, are willing to adopt and really try things out. So right now, for example, we have about 1,000 robots deployed all over the world.
Wow.
We're the US, Canada, UK, Norway, Singapore, and starting to scale up with a lot of groups too. And a lot of these groups are going from, a few properties up to their entire portfolio as a rollout. So they see it. They see the actual data, the validation there. And again, with the F&B side of things, that's another area that's really picking up, I'd say too. So, I mean, I'd say in the next 5 years, it's going to probably be more rare to be at a property without some sort of, automation or robotics.
So I have another two-part question. One, have you thought about how the Houseman robot, dusts and cleans
that's me.
dusts the hallways, and also the biggest thing when I'm running a hotel is those little marks around the walls that nobody looks at, and all of a sudden become a million. Has there been any thought about doing that? And number two, what has been you deployed a robot, and outside of the employee using the robot the right way, what's been the, oh my God, we didn't think about that, now we have to think about that?
Interesting. Yeah. So on your first question, definitely. I mean, I want to create a platform where you can have dusting all the way to trash pickup or different things like that, right? So kind of this accessories, just like you can have apps, right? For your phone, you could have quote unquote physical apps for your robot that you could plug in with these accessories. So I think that's the way of the future, and having this one unit that's delivering linens, but also dusting, but also picking up trash and doing other things will become where we're headed. Will be, where we're headed. But in terms of today, it's really one use case, right? Like we talked about, it's do this one thing well, prove it, and then that's, your entryway to the next.
Right. And I think generally speaking, doing one thing well makes a lot of sense, because if you look at the history of consumer electronics, for example, when they try to do too many things at once, then everything becomes average and doesn't really succeed. So I think the same philosophy will apply for a while until you can figure it all out, how to get it to make the bed and be doing the vacuuming at the same time, right?
Yeah, no, 100%. And that's, again, your background is the vision.
Yeah.
And we're going to get there one day pretty soon. So, and then on the second question, Anthony, so there's been a lot of lessons learned, right? Like, first of all, robots are hard, and getting consistency. It's all about consistency, and we've been really focused on that over the past couple of years of getting it to really do the same thing, because there are edge cases, there are different environments and things like that. But really, I'd say one of the biggest things has been change management, and the average housekeeper is 60 years old, 60.
Oh my God.
And they're
God bless those people still doing it.
I know it's crazy. It's such a challenging job, and to be doing it 20, 30 years. So with that in mind, they have been doing the same thing for 20, 30 years, right? And they've been doing it well, and they don't want to change it up, or they don't want somebody coming in and saying, let's do this thing. So there are definitely some room attendants that are like, yes, technology is great, but I'd say that's more of the exception, honestly. And with that in mind, how do you make it help them and as easy as possible? So one thing that's actually been interesting too is we started in rooms. The robot form factor is more for rooms, but then when we deployed into public space, then you start having room attendants say, wait, this robot's cleaning the hallways or the meeting space, whatever. Where's my robot? I want a robot to help me in the rooms. So there's this kind of psychological side of it too, where they're more open to that. And that's been something interesting. But with any technology, right, change management is really kind of at the core of making it work.
And I'm sure you have butt up against the union in some of these cities, and where they don't want to see a robot. And if they do, you better not be taking anybody's job. So how's that been?
Yeah, for sure. So, and we've talked to them before, the big one in housekeeping in the US. And, they say they're all about attracting and retaining staff, right? And that's what they want for the industry. That's how they make money, right? And that's how we're framing this too, is of course there are efficiencies here. A lot of our partners actually just deploy the robots to help the room attendants, and then they see efficiencies more in the public spaces. So how can we help with retention and reducing workers' comp and reducing injuries and just creating that better kind of quality of work, quality of life? And then you see more of the ROI in the public spaces that honestly aren't getting cleaned or done today a lot of the time too. So that's, positioning thing. And we are in some union properties. and they love it. They feel better at the end of the day. They feel like they have less wrist and shoulder injuries. And somebody came up to me once and hugged me and was like, I have energy to, play with my grandkids at the end of the day. And things like that like can actually change somebody's life in a way.
That's wonderful.
That's impactful.
Yeah. So let me ask, I'm curious, a couple of things. Number one, if it's deployed in a room, how does that work to make sure that like the housekeeping stays safe? They don't accidentally trip over it and cause an inadvertent injury, which they were trying to avoid in the first place.
Yeah. So the robot has a camera and a LiDAR sensor, and then is able to navigate around. Yeah. And it's kind of like a dance a little bit. Like, they're getting used to it in terms of the deployment. The other side too is sometimes they'll deploy the robot before they clean the bathroom. So they're just in separate places in the room. Right. Or they just leave the robot behind, let it clean while they clean the next room. Right. And then you're just not in there in the first place. So it's
that I like better because quite frankly, at my grocery store of choice, they have this Marty the robot that wanders around, and it's always like getting in my way and causing more of a hassle. But it has the sensor, so it stops, so it doesn't run you down. But I just feel uncomfortable with it in my presence. So I like the idea of having it go ahead or stay behind to do a different room and be focused on two rooms at once. Anthony?
I want to see the sign that says robot in room.
Yeah. Yeah, well, we want to have the do not disturb signs with the robot, robot cleaning, robot. I love
that. All right. So, Micah, how does it work then for you? Because one of the concerns I would have as an owner is what happens if it breaks down? What kind of plan do I have in place to replace it? And what do I do in the meantime? How does it get fixed?
Yeah, for sure. So something that's interesting about robotics that's different than the machines or different than some of the technology there today is you have a lot of sensors and data coming through that. Right. So we're actually able to see things before it happens. And other robotics companies sometimes have this too, where you can predict when a motor is going to fail, or you can predict when a battery needs to, is at the end of its cycle. And you can deal with that before. Like one of my philosophies that I talk to the team a lot about is the best service is not needing service, right? So which is kind of counterintuitive in this industry. But if I don't have to pick up the phone and call because my computer has an issue and I can fix it, even better, right? Or it fixes itself or whatever, right? So for us, we're doing that proactively. That's like the data I was mentioning with ChatGPT that we're streaming through proactively. And we designed the robot to be really modular so that you don't even need a screwdriver to swap out certain parts.
That's beautiful. That makes it really simple.
I just stole your quote.
Which
the best service is not needing service.
Yeah.
Well, it's like you sit down at a restaurant and, I want water to be there. Why do I have to ask for water? It's stuff like that. That's
right. Yeah, I think that's fabulous. So do you operate on you buy it or is it a lease agreement? How does that typically work?
Yeah, so we have both, but typically lease. And that's pretty common in robotics now is robots as a service is like the new model. So it's just a recurring, monthly, because then it's more OpEx versus CapEx. So people prefer that.
Yeah.
And without giving the price, are they like crazy expensive and only for really big hotels with big budgets, or can mom and pop with 200 rooms on the side of I-70 afford it?
Yeah, so for many robots are very expensive. Ours are not. We worked on the cost side of things, and really the big goal here is providing a solution and getting that adoption. So typically people will see like a 2 to 3x ROI, and we're in select service hotels. We're in the top tier luxury properties. With 1,000 rooms or 1,600 rooms.
Can we play a little Price is Right game? Is it less or more than $7,500?
For purchase, you're pretty much on the spot.
Not bad.
You nailed it. Actually, that was.
I've been doing this a little while. All right.
Yeah, damn.
Because I said what is really, really expensive. What's really expensive is $50,000 and nobody's touching it. Yeah. What's really expensive for a small hotel? $5,000. This is robotics. This is the next level. If you really want to get them their attention, you have to really sell it and show an ROI. $7,500 will at least start the conversation. Anything more than that in this business is going to get you out the door.
Oh, yeah, but Micah, you could also, I would think, I don't know if you already do this in part of your sales pitch, but one of the things I'm thinking about is what it costs to replace an employee. Because housekeeping has so much turnover. If you could save one or two of those, you've already paid for this.
Right, exactly. So yeah, that's part of it for sure. The workers' comp again, that like you have one less workers' comp claim that results in ROI right there, and then the efficiencies too. So yeah, definitely agree. And then Anthony, totally agree with that point too. We're situated there. I mean, costs are continuing to go down for certain components too. One of our sensors, our LiDAR sensor, used to cost like $6,000.
Right.
Now it's in the order of hundreds of dollars. Right. So you're starting.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Now, are you looking at building your own components in some instances?
We do. It's mainly custom, but sensors are off the shelf, and those typically take years and sometimes billions of dollars to get to market, and the camera's off the shelf. So it's cool because we can integrate a lot of different technologies together versus having to build everything from scratch.
Well, if you need a consultant to help you with some of the ideas, let me know. I've been doing this a long time, and I have a company that I work with, a major cleaning company that if you ever want to, and I'm sure you have your own ins, but I would love to help you simply because, or we would love to help you simply because I remember meeting you and I was like, okay, all right. Because one of the things I hate more than anything is when people say this generation coming up. Well, you can say that about every generation, including my generation.
Every generation has had that said
about
their generation.
There were people that were watching too much television, right? So they were in front of their television. Now there's people that are watching too much of their phone. And then there's kids that are lazy and there's kids that aren't lazy. And specifically in all the schools that I've spoken to, Cornell is one of the standouts in really, really motivated kids. Yeah. Like you would think, here are these kids, maybe they were born with a silver spoon in their mouth and, they're smart and they think they're going to take over the world. Well, they are going to take over the world, but they're really respectful about it. And I learned, I've never had a bad class there that I was speaking to that was not unbelievably respectful.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'd say most people I knew at Cornell were pretty humble, but really smart and hardworking. And I think because you see what's possible, you see what their families done.
You saw your grandparents, like you said, you saw your grandparents and mother. So we see your mom out there being her, herself, and she's, everybody knows her, and she's this unbelievable person in our industry. We don't see the grind, right? Yeah. We don't see what you saw growing up.
Yeah, no, and I was there. I was, at the office when the office was at home and before it scaled up, and you see it and you feel that, and I think it's people crazy enough to follow that. And crazy enough to stick with it too, right? I think persistence is key with.
Yeah, and when she started, I thought everybody was full of crap writing these revenue books. And when she wrote, when I read hers, I was like, okay, we just got the Bible.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
So here's a long one, but it's interesting. Daniel is saying AI, this is Daniel Rothfeld, AI has broad application in hospitality way beyond robotics. As an example, the next step in AI-aided hotel design will be reintegrating real-world performance data from built hotels into hotel design tools. That's pretty cool. That's my own comment. With smart devices tracking use data, hotels will become part of a continuously evolving and improving system. The beginnings of this system are already emerging with sensors tracking locations, stocking of housekeeping carts, and in-room sensors, tracking use of drawers, phones, et cetera, et cetera. Fascinating. So let's do the second part first, which you kind of already talked about. I love the idea of tracking and stocking what we said about the housekeeping carts, but the in-room sensors are definitely getting better. But like tracking use of drawers and phones and stuff like that. If somebody, was opening and closing a door and forgot a drawer, they could and called, hey, I forgot something. Or maybe they'll be able alerted to it. The guest could be alerted to, hey, you forgot something. That kind of a deal.
Yeah, no, 100%. You think about these big companies, right? Google, Facebook, of course, people talk about the data side as the value, right? Having all this data of people online and what they're shopping for, searching for, all of that location. I think the future is data in the physical world. Right? Like, what are we doing within these environments, like a hotel or an office space or whatever that is? And how do you create an experience, especially in the hotel industry, this special experience that's really tailored towards them? So think about, things as simple as I like my room at 69 degrees when I go to bed. Right. If they somehow knew that, right? And I walk in and it's 69 degrees, great. It's that service before you need it, right?
Well, these are the things that they should be tracking within the guest frequency programs at hotels, because if they're going to ask me what type of pillow I like, and that they could figure that other stuff out too, right?
Yeah, and then there's other layers to it too. So like I was mentioning data at a high level earlier, but our robots are essentially mobile data platforms, and other robots have different data points as well. But you could start to look at things like air quality, right? And you could say that this room meets the spec, right? Or it doesn't, and somebody has to come in and do something. Or you could look at potential mold and deal with that before it becomes a big issue, before there's odor that comes from that. Another huge thing that we've heard is actually the biggest thing is, in the US at least, is Wi-Fi signal strength.
Right.
Which, Wi-Fi is more important than hot water for a lot of guests, right? And with that, if your Wi-Fi is down, you're going to complain about it. Or if it's not consistent enough, and that's a big thing people want, because, especially business travelers. So our robots can track bad Wi-Fi and can tell you which rooms have bad Wi-Fi before the guest checks in. So you could deal with it, and that's not a linear problem, right? It can be
again, removing the problem before the guest is even aware.
Have a teenage volleyball team in your hotel without Wi-Fi. See how long that lasts. But what the heck was I going to say? Remember I told you, Glenn?
Yeah, before, but I want to go. While you're thinking, I want to go back to this AI-aided hotel design, which would to reintegrate real-world performance data. I love that. So, for example, Wyndham is doing Echo hotels and suites, and they're going to be building a whole lot of them. It'd be pretty cool if they could learn from the first 10 or 15 the nuances of the prototype design and then make tweaks to it in order to be able to make it most efficient. And that's really what we're talking about, Micah, right?
Yeah, and I think it's a combination. You have sensors in the rooms, right? And then you have also through the robotics to see things. So one thing that we've talked about with some big brands before is, what if during stayover cleans, the robot can tell them where people put their luggage, how much luggage they have, which are the dirtiest areas. We can track dust count. So what are the dirtiest areas, whether it's where they're eating or, their shoe, where they're walking, and being able to say, hey, the guests use this area the most. This is where they like to put stuff. This is how much they have. You can start to leverage that for design and, understand, still respecting privacy. There's nothing like personal, but being able to show that actual usage, and tailor towards that.
Yeah. And to your point, as far as new builds, one of the things that happens when you're building a hotel, so you have the contractor, you have maybe the contractor's in Washington, D.C., and the building is in Nebraska. So you have somebody on site for the contractor. Then you have an owner that's trying to track it, and they may or may not be there. And then, of course, the bank. And you just have all these people that are not on property. And there's been some type of technology that I've used that is camera based, where you basically go around with this camera, and it's a technology that's kind of limited. What would be great if there was a way for me to see, when I'm looking at a project, which rooms have the sheetrock up, which rooms have the fire alarms, which rooms now we're putting in the beds. They're telling me all the beds are in. And I'm getting, data that's saying from the people I work with, saying the beds aren't in. Half the beds are in, half the beds aren't in. Or everything's going well, but for some reason we did forget to put in a bed, or we did forget to put in a fire alarm. Like, that would be extremely helpful. Has that something on your mind at all?
Yeah, totally. And with a camera, that's a platform, right? You can start to look at things like that and validate things like that with these sensors. I mean, one thing, like even just simplifying it is crazy how inaccurate blueprints and floor plans are. They are really off. And
I've never been on a project where they've matched.
No, exactly. And like, that's a basic thing that we're collecting every single day, because we need to. The robot needs to know where it is and, draw the maps to the millimeter, right? Like that millimeter accuracy. Which isn't there today. So even that basic level is a little off, and still using some antiquated solutions. And then Anthony, I'm sure too, through Hotel Impossible and in general, you've seen some properties with bed bug issues, right? Yeah.
One or two. Call me Dr. Bedbug.
How many episodes were there? Yeah.
Listen, we all say we have one talent. I know way too much about bed bugs, but yeah.
Yeah, no, exactly. And it's still an issue, right? There's like a time it kind of peaked, but it's still there. Right. So what if you could see that before a guest checks in?
And to be clear, bed bugs happens at all strata of hotels, no matter what. It's not necessarily an indication of the cleanliness of a hotel.
Yeah.
This is what I say to every employee and every person that will listen to me. Hotels don't have bed bugs. Guests have bed bugs and bring them to our
That's
hotel.
right. That's right.
Period. Like you don't open a hotel and they have bed bugs. You don't bring in the mattress and they have bed bugs. There is a hotel, one of the best hotels, I won't tell you where, in Florida somewhere, and they had to close the entire hotel. They had to close the entire hotel until they fixed it. I took over a hotel with 1,200 rooms. I asked the managing or the general manager at the time, how many rooms you have with bed bugs? He goes, 36. I said, how do you know? He says, the guests tell me. I said, what's your inspection like? And he goes, well, we don't inspect. We wait for the guests to tell us.
What?
We had a bed bug dog come in. It was the first bed bug dog in the world. Happened to create it. Actually, he was in Florida where I was. And I saw a little ad somewhere, and I was like, hey, come in. I was his first customer. It worked, and we had, I think, 275 bed bugs.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy. All right, guys.
That would help a lot. That would help a lot.
Yeah, we've got to wrap this up because we've got to get going today. But Micah, how can we learn more? How can we find you?
Yeah, so you can find us Tailos.com or reach out. My email is m@tailos.com. So yeah, thanks again so much for having me. This was fun.
So can I ask one question before we leave, Glenn?
Yes, please.
Oh, you got to go, right? But real quick, what is the one thing that general managers or owners of hotels say to you to push back on robotics outside of price? What's the biggest challenge?
I think there's a mentality. You have the early adopters who ask, how do we make this work? And you have people that say, will this work? And the people that say, will this work, typically aren't the best fits to start.
Right.
Good point.
I love it. Micah, thank you so much for being here.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, guys.
I appreciate it.
Bye.
All right. This was a fun one.
I love the way he answered that question.
Yeah.
It tells you how smart he is and why he's successful.
Yeah, I know. And I just wish I had half of that.
Because that nuance of what he just said of, will this be successful?
Yep.
Most people are going to be in the sales mode of convincing you. He literally taught me something in that. I was like, you know what? That's probably the best way of, don't start with that client. That was a really subtle, good sales strategy.
Yeah. Here's a not so subtle sales strategy. Hey, download the No Vacancy podcast. If you're watching us, listen on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, SoundCloud, wherever you get your shows. We are. If you happen to be listening to us right now, why not watch us? Find us on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, and wherever you like to watch your shows. All right. Thanks so much for being here. We'll be back soon with another great show. You looking forward to having a good day, Anthony?
I am having a good day. We'll both be on the road next week, I think, right?
Yeah, we will. You're in one city. I'll be at the lodging.
Are we doing the podcast next week, or what are we doing?
No, not next week. Maybe next Friday we could do an Ask Anthony and Glenn. Let's do a wrap up next Friday.
So let's tell the audience we won't be live next week.
We won't be live next week. I'll be doing a ton of coverage from the lodging conference, and so stick around for that. And I am off to go deal with a hot topic session of a Hotel Business Magazine. If you want, join us over there. It's going to be focused on labor. Talk to you all later. Remember, you've got one life, so blaze on, and
be kind to yourself.
See you later.